Welcome to Postcard English Stories, a gentle space for slow learning, simple stories, and quiet dreams. Hello and welcome. You've just arrived at Postcard English Stories, a podcast made for English learners, daydreamers, and anyone who loves the beauty of small, quiet moments. My name is Quinn. I'm not a native speaker. I didn't grow up with English. In fact, I started learning it seriously in my 60s. But I believe it's never too late to learn something new, and it's never too late to dream again. This podcast is my personal journey, told through short, simple stories. Each episode is like a tiny postcard sent from the heart, a warm cup of tea, a slow walk in the rain, a memory, a moment, a word I've just learned and fallen in love with. I speak slowly, clearly, gently, so you can listen, feel, and learn without pressure. Here we don't worry about grammar mistakes. We don't chase perfection. We simply sit together, breathe together, and grow. One English story at a time. So wherever you are, in your kitchen, on a walk, or curled up in bed, I invite you to pause with me. Take a deep breath, and let's begin this soft journey into English and into ourselves. It was one of those quiet afternoons when the sky turned a soft gray and the world outside seemed to move slower than usual. I sat by the window, my hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, jasmine, my favorite. The gentle steam rose up, carrying with it a scent that reminded me of simpler days. Days when dreams were still small and the heart was still light. I didn't know when exactly it started, this habit of having tea and daydreaming in English. Maybe it was after I heard a podcast that said, "If you dream in another language, you are halfway to mastering it." That sentence stuck with me. From that day on, I started to weave English into my thoughts, into my little dreams. So, there I was. A woman in her 60s sitting quietly, whispering thoughts to herself in a language she wasn't born with. Maybe one day I can tell a story in English, just one little story, I thought. And somehow, that little wish became the beginning of something much bigger than I had imagined. I still remember the first English word I ever heard. I was 7 years old, sitting on the cold floor of my grandmother's living room, listening to my uncle play a cassette tape. The sound was scratchy, the music unfamiliar. Then I heard it, a voice singing, "Hello, goodbye. I don't know why you say goodbye. I say hello." I didn't understand a single word, but a rhythm danced in my ears like magic. I repeated hello over and over again, laughing at the way it rolled off my tongue. It was the first time I realized that words could sound like music. Later that night, I asked my uncle, "What does hello mean?" He smiled and said, "It's how you say Xin Chao in English." I was amazed. Just one word could open a door to a whole other world. From that moment on, I kept a tiny notebook. I didn't know how to spell properly, but I wrote what I heard. Hilo, tank, you, good, nigh. It was childish, full of mistakes, but it was mine. It was my little secret, a collection of sounds from another universe. Years passed. Life took me far from my childhood dreams. I got married, worked in the market, raised children, faced losses, and chased survival more than dreams. English disappeared from my days like a sunset forgotten in the rush of life. But then came that one quiet afternoon, the one I told you about. The tea, the silence, the wish. I found myself wondering, why did I ever stop? So I began again. This time not as a child chasing sounds, but as a woman rediscovering her voice. Every evening I made myself a cup of jasmine tea and opened my heart to English. I listened to podcasts. I repeated phrases aloud. I whispered stories to myself. I wasn't perfect. I forgot words. I laughed at my own grammar. But I kept going. Because now, English wasn't just a language. It was a mirror. It showed me who I used to be, who I had become, and who I still wanted to be. Some people think learning a language is only for the young, but I think learning something new at an older age is a quiet rebellion, a way of telling life, I'm still growing. At first, I struggled with the simplest sentences. My name is Quinn. I like tea. I live in Hanoi. But each sentence was a small victory. Each word, a step back into the garden of my forgotten dreams. I started keeping a daily journal, not in Vietnamese, but in English. Just one sentence a day. Sometimes I wrote, I saw a bird today. Sometimes, I feel lonely but also proud. Sometimes it was just, I am trying. It was a Sunday morning. The world was quiet, wrapped in soft sunlight. I stood in front of the mirror, my cup of tea resting gently on the windowsill beside me. I looked at myself, a woman with silver in her hair and stories in her eyes. And I said, in English, Good morning. I hope you're doing well today. It wasn't for anyone else, just for me. I smiled. It felt strange, but beautiful, like giving yourself a warm hug with words. Then I continued slowly. Today I will be kind to myself. I will take things slow. I will speak, even if I make mistakes. I didn't sound fluent. My accent was strong, but my voice was honest. It carried something no textbook ever teaches: heart. Since that morning, I began every day with a short talk to the mirror. Sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes just one sentence, but always in English. Always with love. That mirror became more than glass. It became a listener, a friend, a witness to the quiet courage of showing up for myself. One afternoon, I sat down to write a postcard, not to anyone in particular, just to the future version of me. I wrote it in English. Dear me, it began. I hope when you read this, you're still dreaming, still sipping tea, still learning. I told her about my small victories, how I learned to use have been correctly, how I finally understood the difference between some and any, how I fell in love with the word serendipity. I told her that some days were hard, that I felt slow, that sometimes I wanted to give up, but I also told her that I didn't. I kept going, with my notebook, with my mirror, with my tea. I ended the postcard with these words: keep your dreams warm, like tea. They taste better when you believe in them. I placed the postcard on my desk. A gentle breeze blew it somewhere under the bookshelf. I never found it again. But maybe it didn't need to arrive. Maybe writing it was enough. Maybe that's what dreams are. Letters we write to ourselves, even if they never arrive. Because the act of writing them changes everything. There is something magical about learning new words under the open sky. One morning, I took my little notebook and a pen and went out to my tiny garden. The jasmine flowers were blooming, and the air smelled like sunshine. I sat on a wooden stool next to the roses and whispered a word: blossom. I wrote it down slowly. Blossom, a flower, but also to grow, to become more beautiful, to open up. I touched a petal gently and said to it, you blossom, and so will I. That morning, I didn't just learn vocabulary, I felt it. Each flower became a word. Daisy, simple joy. Lily, quiet strength. Sunflower, always turning toward the light. I began creating what I called word gardens. I wrote one word per day and paired it with a memory, a scent, or a feeling. Some words I planted in my journal. Others I carried in my heart. I no longer memorized words. I befriended them, and they, in return, stayed with me longer than any rule or grammar book ever could. It rained that afternoon. Not the soft, romantic kind of rain, but the heavy, unpredictable type. The kind that soaks you before you find shelter. I had just finished a Zoom call with a small English speaking group. We were practicing introductions. I wanted to say, I've been learning English for 1 year, but instead I said, I am learning English since 1 year. There was a pause. Then the teacher smiled kindly and said, Almost perfect, but let's fix that tense a bit. I nodded, embarrassed. My cheeks were hot, even though the room was cold. After the call, I walked outside in the rain. No umbrella, no coat, just the need to breathe. Each drop that landed on my skin reminded me, you're human. You're learning. It's okay. I remembered something I had once read. Mistakes are proof that you are trying, and trying is proof that you care. I whispered that to myself, over and over. I care. I care. I care. By the time I got home, my clothes were soaked, but my heart was light again. That evening, with a towel around my shoulders and a hot cup of tea in my hands, I wrote in my journal, Today I made a mistake, and today I learned. And that is beautiful. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when the sky caught fire. I was sitting on a wooden bench near the lake, holding a warm cup of tea in both hands, just watching. The horizon was melting. Orange spilling into pink, pink into purple. The water reflected it all like a painting made for no one and everyone at once. I sat still, not because I had nowhere to go, but because for once I didn't want to be anywhere else. I had brought my little English notebook with me, the one with the soft cover and the words, Small Steps Every Day, written in gold on the front. Inside it, I had written pages and pages of little phrases, vocabulary lists, small diary entries, and sometimes just a single word that felt like it belonged to me. That evening, I didn't write anything. I just stared at the sky and listened. There's a phrase I love in English. The sky was bleeding colors. I had read it once in a short story. At the time, I didn't quite understand. How could the sky bleed? But now, sitting there with the wind brushing gently against my hair, I got it. I really got it. The sky was bleeding. Not in pain, but in beauty, in emotion, in quiet surrender. And I whispered, This is why I love English. Not because it's perfect, not because I speak it fluently, but because it lets me describe things I never had the words for before. It gives shape to feelings that once only lived in silence. I opened the voice recorder on my phone, the one I usually use to practice pronunciation. But this time, I didn't repeat textbook sentences or grammar drills. I simply spoke. Hello, I began, my voice soft and unsure. My name is Quinn. I am 63 years old, and I am learning English. I paused. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of nearby street food, grilled corn, roasted sweet potatoes. Sometimes I forget words, sometimes I feel foolish. But today, I am here, and today, the sunset is speaking to me. I let the silence fill in the rest. And then, I said something unexpected, a sentence that came not from a book, not from a lesson, but from my soul. Dear sunset, thank you for reminding me that endings can be beautiful too. Tears welled up in my eyes, not because I was sad, but because I felt seen. Even if only by the sky, even if only by myself. I walked home slowly after that. I didn't listen to music. I didn't rush. I let every breath be a sentence, every step a quiet line of poetry. That night, I played the recording while sipping my tea. I heard my own voice, hesitant but honest, and for the first time, I didn't cringe at my accent or mistake. I listened like I was hearing an old friend speak for the first time after years of silence. I realized then, this is what it means to belong to yourself. To be brave enough to speak, even when you're unsure. To create beauty from broken sentences. To tell the sky your secrets. And maybe, just maybe, the sky will answer. I created my English corner on a rainy morning. The kind of rain that taps gently on the window, not in a hurry to go anywhere. I had just finished a podcast episode, and one sentence stayed with me. Create a space for your dreams to visit. That idea sat with me all morning. So I stood up, looked around my tiny apartment, and thought, where can I build a space just for English? Just for me? I chose a small nook by the window, where the light comes in soft and golden in the morning. I moved a little table there, placed my tea set on one side, a small potted plant on the other, and in the middle, my notebook. This notebook wasn't new, the cover was worn, some pages were coffee-stained, but inside, a living record of my journey. Lists of phrasal verbs, sentences I practiced 100 times, quotes I loved, even doodles of teacups and stars. Above the table, I pinned postcards, quotes, even a small map of the world. I marked places I dreamed of visiting. London, Kyoto, Florence. And somewhere in the middle, a sticky note that said, keep going, even if your voice shakes. Every morning, I sit in that corner with a candle lit and a hot drink in hand. It doesn't have to be tea. Sometimes it's coffee. Sometimes warm lemon water. The drink isn't the point. The ritual is. I open my notebook, flip to a blank page, and just begin. One day I might write about the weather. It's cloudy today. The kind of gray that makes you want to stay inside and think. Another day I might describe my feelings. I feel small today. But I am still here. Some days I try new vocabulary. Other days I revisit old words and give them new meaning. Hope, believing in the light even when it's still dark. Grace, letting yourself be enough even when you're not perfect. One afternoon I printed out a message from an old friend. It was written in English. You always dreamed bigger than your world. I pinned it to the wall above my candle. Every time I see it, I remember why I started. This corner is where I cried after making mistakes in speaking practice, where I celebrated when I finally understood conditionals, where I wrote my first 100-word story and read it aloud to myself like it was a prize. My English corner is more than a place. It's a promise. A promise that I will keep learning, not because I have to, but because I want to. Because every new word is a step toward a fuller version of myself. Because when I sit here, I don't feel old or late or behind. I feel present, alive, becoming. And maybe that's what learning really is, a daily act of becoming.